We're going to go ahead and start the meeting. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. So welcome, everyone. I want to go ahead and just say happy Saturday, and we will move forward. And we'll start with just some review of committee reports. And I'm just trying to look and scan who's here at the meeting just to see if we have everyone here for committee reports. But I'm going to go ahead and, if I can, I will put up the agenda just for today. It's very brief, but we will do committee reports. Then we will talk about the bylaws, and we'll do a quick introduction for the bylaws, and then we'll go into a discussion. And what if you have not seen the memo and the bylaws, please look at those. Those are on the website, and I can pull those up, or our presenters can pull that up as well. I think I just want to get a quick update from our committee members, and make sure we have committee chairs, and make sure we have just an update about when next meetings are, if there's anything going on, what to look for, what's happening around the city. So why don't we go ahead and start? Do we want to go ahead and start with Maggie? Do you have any updates?
No, we haven't been meeting. Probably won't start to meet again until next year.
January. Okay. All right. So after that, so look forward to a meeting coming up next year. I know there are a few new parks. I went to a park opening. Oh, it's been a month or so. But we went to a new park opening, and I know there's some new land that Denver's acquired. So keep your eyes on that. I'm still trying to hit all the parks in the city. So next, could I call on Ian and Christine? Do you want to go ahead with Zap?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Ian Thomas Tafoya here, co-chair of zoning and planning for the last few years. Christine O'Connor, I think, is on here if there's any other questions. This last month, what we had, there's been this expanding housing affordability task force that's been happening for the last year or so. If people don't recall, we, INC, were supportive of inclusionary housing in rental properties. And so Annalise Hawk from the Community Planning and Development came to give us a run through of what's being proposed now. I want to let people know that there's lots of opportunities, open houses, forums for people to participate. We're having a steering committee meeting next week. We're going to forward that around. That was followed up by Abe Barge from CPD, who was talking to us about text amendments for accessory dwelling units. It really comes down to a text amendment bundle about a year ago that needed to have this error fixed in it. The upcoming meeting for us is actually next week, because normally we're the fourth week and it would be in November, right around the holidays. And so we decided to move it up a week. So please make sure, if you want to check in with zoning and planning, it'd be next week, 9:30 to 11:30. We're bringing back the conversation with Global Area Responsive Coalition and the city of Denver to have a discussion about the National Western Master Plan. As you recall, the community and my committee had brought forward a discussion about how they could reopen the National Western Stock Show to have a more inclusive, community-driven dialogue. And so it got sent back to our committee. We discussed it, and so we're seeking to get Laura Aldretti, the head of CPD, the director, if not someone from her staff, along with GS Coalition. We expect it to be a presentation about how the plan exists now, what would be the official process if we did want to amend it, and what the request from GES is. At the end, it's very possible we may see a new resolution, so just keep your eyes out on that. There's not a firm, hard timeline on this, so it's taking as long as it needs to. Is something that our committee is committed to.
Great, thanks, Ian. Christine, do you have anything else to add?
No, I just want people to get on our mailing list, because I sent out a long email with the discussion from the last meeting. So if you want to be on the email list, just message me or Ian here. Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. Oh, So in the chat, which Ellen thanks, new City Park Playground just opened as well. Come check it out. Awesome. So it's kind of fun just to see. I really like to see the new innovations in playgrounds. So it's kind of fun to see. I know what it was. It was the art park. That was the last one that I went to. That was really quite fun to go see. So, and there was music, and it was a great opening. So thanks again for everybody on that. Let me go to Jane. Do you have anything you want to add for climate and sustainability? Let's go there.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Jane Potts, along with Perry Burnap. We co-chair the Sustainability Committee. Our major report right now is that the delegate meeting in February will be the next city's report out on their annual report to citizens. So that will be the delegate meeting in February. And other than that, I don't have anything additional to report.
Jane, if you wouldn't mind me just jumping in really quick for those who don't know, just last week, the state released its 5-year strategy plan on how it plans to spend the 2A climate action funding from just a couple years ago. I guess we passed it in 2020. So you can check it out. It has an energy part, all these different parts, but it's roughly how they're going to spend their $40 million over the next 5 years. So
Right.
I'll look for a link and drop it in here for people.
Thanks.
That would be great. Thank you. Let me go on to, I know I saw Joel. Do you want to talk about transportation?
Yeah, certainly. Good morning, everyone. The INC Transportation Committee meeting didn't meet this month. We meet the second Thursday of alternating months. That just happened to fall on Veterans Day. A lot of the topics we were trying to bring, folks were taking the day off from the city, or had the day off for the holiday, and then we're taking the next day off. So coming in for an evening meeting was not available. So we'll be meeting again starting in January, but we did encourage people to attend a number of alternate events. One of which I just wanted to highlight, there's a recording of on the Denver Streets Partnership YouTube page, Decriminalizing Multimodal Transportation, a panel discussion that many of the nonprofits in the city helped pull together. And it was really great to just hear from people of color about transportation topics and about how specifically multimodal transportation, biking and walking affects them. That was great. We also had a follow-up from Councilman Cashman from our last meeting. As you know, he's advancing the 20 is plenty, reducing the default speed limit in the city. He promised to follow up with us with a copy of a big study that the city did prior to that. And it's a comprehensive speed limit reduction feasibility study. It's not just about the local streets. So we distributed that. That is worth combing through. It's a big study, but it's because the city funded it and it's very professionally done. I think it will form the basis for our future discussions about speed limit adjustments throughout the city. So it's well worth looking at. We also distributed applications for grants for neighborhoods from the Community Active Living Coalition. You can get $1,500 for your neighborhood for doing sort of active living projects, biking, walking, transit education programs, community art projects, etc. So we hope some neighborhoods take advantage of that. As with the previous topic, statewide concerns are something we're tracking, and specifically the greenhouse gas goals. As those roll down to CDOT and to DRCOG, they're both redoing their 10-year plans to be in better alignment with the greenhouse gas goals. So we've had presentations on that recently, and we will continue following that because that'll really reshuffle the priorities, I think, in a very good way. So our next meeting will be in January, and we've already got several speakers lined up. I'm looking to get Adam Phipps lined up. He's been the interim executive director for Dottie, and just in the last few days, the mayor nominated him as the executive director pending city council approval. So we want to get him in as soon as possible. I did have a chance to meet with him and a couple other groups kind of in a small group meeting the other day. And yeah, it was pretty good, really. We looked at each other as we left the meeting and said, Yeah, he seems pretty good. So we'll see if he's willing to come join us. Thanks.
I think there is also a hand up. Is there someone who has a question? Oh, Jane.
Yes, hi, thank you, Loretta. I also co-chair with Hank Boots and Stella Yu and Karen Tate Trailer that we will be doing youth civic engagement grants this next spring for teens in high school primarily. We will have at least 3 $500 grants available. We'll be sending that out to RNOs this next week. So if you know of a group of teens that are working through their school or their church or their community that are doing things in their neighborhoods that are beneficial to themselves and to their neighborhoods, make sure you find this grant and help get that to them, because I think $500 could help a lot of these groups. Thank you.
And Jane, if you could stay on just 1 second, I want to add one other thing while we have you there and talking about awards. I want to try and press upon everyone that, part of what INC does every year is, and during COVID, it's been very odd to try and do this, but we have always had an awards ceremony. And usually we had a dinner. Last year we did it virtually. And for those of you who attended or watched it after the fact, it was wonderful. And please all give a thanks to Jane, very great. It was so wonderful. And what we need, and more than anything, and I can't press upon anyone enough, is that we want to continue this, because it's really important for us and for civic engagement and for community engagement is to have people who are engaged and to get, a diverse group of people who want to be engaged and to get, different age groups, renters, landowners, residents of Denver. We want everybody to be involved. So we want to honor people who've done great things in their community. And we know over the last year it's been hard, but we know there are a lot of people who've done wonderful things working with their own neighborhoods. So what we want to do is, and we know it's late, we want to probably have another awards dinner. We don't know. I mean, we're at 9.5% of infection rate, which we're supposed to be at 2 or something. We're at an incredibly high infection rate and we're going into winter. So we're not planning to do anything in person, but we would like to do another virtual awards. Now, doing the awards, we're not looking at a dinner then. We're not looking at maybe the next year we'll have a dinner or a luncheon. But this year we'll do it all again virtually. And that means just we need a committee to come together. And I know some of you are, pretty active in your community, but if you would please volunteer, and if we can just have people step up to the plate, because we really want to honor people who've done things in their community over the past year. So if you could please contact me or one of the board members or put a message in the chat, that would be wonderful. So again, I'll send out an email to everyone again to say, please help us have an awards for INC. Now, and then I'll pull Greg in to talk about, what he may be willing to help with. So Greg is going to help out. We do have a template of what to do, and Jane has given us that. So it's not like you're starting fresh from scratch. We do have that. So I want everybody to say, hey, I'll raise my hand. I'll be on a committee. It's working through. We may not have the awards until April or May, probably May. But that would be something we'd want to recognize folks for their work they've done in the community. So thanks all for listening, but I really hope that people will volunteer today. So I really appreciate it. I'm going to go now to Greg. Oh, and the other reminder is, please, if you're a delegate from your RNO, go back up to your, photo or go down to, participants and find your name. But if you can go to your name and under there's the little ellipses, the little 3 dots, and you go down to rename yourself and put a D before your name if you're a delegate. And then as you see, the rest of us who you put your name and then you put where you're a delegate from. So if you are a delegate, please rename yourself. And if not, welcome. Thank you for being here anyway, but we want to make sure that we have all the delegates accounted for. Okay. All right, Greg, if you want to follow up with what I was chatting about, and then also the treasurer's report.
Good morning, everyone. Quick treasurer's report. We have a total of $28,405 in cash. Of that, $15,287 is for operating, and $13,117.92 is for our community fund, which supports our awards program. As of October 31st, we had collected for operating $3,927.42 in income. This is RNO membership, $2,110, and associate memberships, $1,815. Our total expenses as of October 31st were $2,703.72. We will have an insurance premium coming due in December that will up our total expenses substantially because that's about $800. For our INC Community Fund, this year we had collected $8,375 in donations, and we awarded $9,178.30. In December of last year, we had also collected $4,000. So that's why we were able to give more in awards than we had actually collected this calendar year. So we have $13,117.92 in our awards fund. This includes a $10,000 transfer from our savings account. And I will be sending out letters to sponsors asking them to sponsor us again this coming year for our awards program. So if you know of anyone who would be willing to make a donation to INC, we are a 501c3 group, and we would be asking for people to donate for awards and also for RNO recognition programs. Any questions? Thank you. I look forward to a very profitable year in terms of fundraising. So I appreciate everyone's help. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. And if you want to add to this, I think we have a lot, unfortunately, since, due to COVID, we haven't been able to have our dinner, but it was a wonderful time when we could meet together with, people who've supported INC, people who've supported, our work in community, and they are willing to fund us, and which has been very wonderful. And we've been getting contacted by entities who are saying, hey, we'd like to support you again, so, and here we'll give you money. So those of you who want to volunteer with an awards committee, please, note that we do have funds, which is kind of nice that we can actually honor people with something, really nice. And again, the portion that Jane and Hank are working on, is the grants that, and we do have a template for the awards. So I can't stress enough how vital it is. And if you've gone to a dinner in the past, how nice it is to see each other in a more informal environment and be able to chat with each other. And so just want to put that out there. All right. I just did a quick count and I think we have a quorum. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we go ahead and do introductions. I think it was March, I appointed a committee to work on the bylaws. So it was time for us to update the bylaws, several issues. And if you read my email or saw my letter on the website, I talked about we want to update things with the us doing things via web, and we're doing things on Zoom and how we do votes. We need to update things for our entity into the 21st century. Additionally, we had the issues that came with, the unrest and the death of George Floyd and, other African Americans across the country, and things that changed. And every organization across the country, every entity, whether it be nonprofit, for-profit or governmental entity, has reassessed their goals, their plans, their bylaws, with an eye on, diversity, equity, inclusion, what we call DEI. Now, with the focus on that, we've worked with, and I think some of Justin Cooper, and we've been working with him through the executive. We will continue to work with him, and hopefully we'll have some plans going forward in the future how we can work with that. But we would be remiss if we did not, make sure we had him review our DEI, changes in the bylaws, right? So we've done that. But I want to thank our committee. They've done a tireless job, and I really want to thank them for their work. And I'm not going to name everybody because, but you can chime in and say, I worked on the committee in the chat. That would be wonderful. So please give them all a hand, because I think, it was an incredible amount of work. I don't think we all wanted to do that work. And so I appreciate that people actually volunteered to do it, which is a thankless job, but we really appreciate it. So I want to start off by introducing, I'm going to say Trish Schmidt, who volunteered to be chair, which is not fun either. And Lou Raders was our scribe, and actually did a lot of the changes and has the experience working with that. So we really appreciate both of you. So I'm going to hand the floor over to you. And I think, Lou, you have access to share your screen. So I think that you can go ahead, and if you want to share your screen, you can. And I'll hand it over to both of you. I don't know who wants to go first. Trisha, do you?
Yeah, just before we get started, I know that Adrian Brown and Eleni Saris are also, I think, on this call. And they were also instrumental in working on the bylaws committee. So my hat goes off to them, as was Emmett, but I don't think Emmett's actually on the call today. But Eleni and Adrian, I know I do see them. So hopefully we will hear from them too, if anybody has any questions. Lou, I think I'm gonna, Loretta already did a good job of outlining what we were hoping to achieve with the bylaws. So I think probably we can just dive into it. So yeah, share your screen. It's a lot to digest, and we appreciate that. We hope you all had a chance to read the memorandum that went along with it, that really discussed the changes and why the changes were made. And there was lots of hearty discussion, to say the least, back and forth and around, both within the committee and then with the committee and the executive committee to get the bylaws where they are today. So my hat goes off to everybody who worked so diligently on them. Hopefully, as Loretta says, this will bring Inc.'s operating, bylaws with how we actually can be a robust committee that serves our RNO membership from this point going forward. So Lou, I'm going to turn it over to you as our scribe who did most of the heavy lifting. If you want to just sort of briefly outline the big changes that were made, and then maybe open it up for questions if people have had a chance to read through it all.
Sure, happy to do that. Thanks, Tricia and Loretta and all of the people who weighed in on this. I was, as many of you know, can you all see my screen right now? So I put I put this memo up because I think for most people, they want to know what did we do, how did we do it, and why did we do it? And this memo was intended for that purpose, to introduce the major concepts. As most of you know, I practiced law for 38 years and am now happily retired, fairly newly retired, but I did a lot of work with large operating nonprofit organizations and some smaller organizations, the Alliance of Professional Women and of course the RNOs, the steering committee, and some of those. But the function of an organization is really to serve its members by its mission and with its bylaws and with a backstop of the Nonprofit Corporations Act. Really, how do we have an organization that meets that mission, that empowers RNOs, delegates to participate and to realize that RNOs together can make a difference in our city and for the residents of our city. And with that as sort of this guiding perspective, we went through and looked at the bylaws. Some of these things are just updates. What are best practices? What are the ways that we can really hone these bylaws again to match the 2018 restated articles, and to look at what was working and what was not working. And the pandemic was a great way to identify what was not working. So we did this process. There were some folks, and I do think Tricia just mentioned several people who were on this call, including Greg, who was my best proofer, who really took this to heart. We had conference calls that went 3 hours, several times, just on the committee level, and talked about the bigger issues, talked about what we wanted to accomplish in terms of sensitivity to the Summer of Justice and the issues that have come up, how divisive the last few political years have been, and how that might impact what we all do to keep those things from keeping us apart, keeping our goals together, and making sure that the mission serves everyone. So first and foremost was, as Loretta said, concerns about making sure that our, here's Emmett, I'm going to admit him here, that our DEI was reviewed, that we really looked at the issues that were raised in the Summer of Justice and looked at questions about how our city was functioning in that category. Any law geeks, there's a great book called The Color of Law. There are several wonderful eye-opening exposés, TED Talks, others about how to become educated and think about this. But we wanted to say, look, we as an organization need to look at that and to try to really implement what we have talked about and what this organization has adopted in terms of inclusion. So I'm going to scroll through just quickly on this memorandum about what these material changes are. Some, by the way, are very immaterial, right? Again, just sort of best practices, clean it up. We didn't have good distinction between officers and the board and those things that really are sort of fundamental to structure, which is what most people think about as the boring part of bylaws. So I just spoke about the DEI, the purpose. One of the things, we have clarification, democratic process. What we looked at too, and these are just highlighting some big changes. Then I'm gonna, if everybody wants, we'll scroll through the actual document before we open it up to comment. But one of the things, since COVID, we really had to have a way for people to participate. Even though they didn't want to come together, even though we couldn't come together, we need to actually do the work, right? Actually take the votes, participate. And there really wasn't a way forward in the current bylaws to do that. So even though there had been some sort of one-off resolutions and votes to allow these things to occur, we thought we would fix it for good. It was interesting. Yesterday was National Philanthropy Day, and for the first time, we went to a very large Sewell Ballroom Rose community sponsored foundation luncheon. It was packed. There were probably 1,000 people or more for this event, all vaccinated and all talking about these kinds of issues. And what was interesting was that there were probably as many or twice as many on Zoom or other platforms. And as we look forward, it probably makes sense to allow people to participate. And what these new bylaws do is say, we can get together, but we can also reach more people. And again, be more inclusive and be more intentional about reaching people if we allow Inc. to utilize electronic forms of communication and other platforms that will help get the message out and help people participate. Again, the goal is to really help Inc. meet its mission and bring in RNOs and make RNOs want to participate and make it easy for them to participate. So as go the large organizations, go Inc. and maybe RNOs. We in Cherry Creek will have ways for people to participate who can't get to a meeting, because frankly, we have a lot of elderly people in the neighborhood who don't really want to come out in the middle of winter and go to a meeting, but want to be a part of it. So when we talk about democratic process, we really talk about how to make it easier for people to get the benefits from the INC brain trust. There are so many people who do such a great job of informing these committee chairs and what they do and the way that they bring this information to all the RNOs is so impressive. And what we ought to do, and to honor them and to honor this mission, is to make sure that that information is available to as many people as possible. And I think that if we do that at Inc., we are going to find that RNOs are going to realize the value that Inc. brings, and we hope that results in more people coming back to the table, participating, and realizing what the INC leadership does for our city, and come back to the table and take advantage of some of the great work that the people who, especially those committees, what they do and the information they bring. So one of the things here, and I'm just going to kind of highlight it here if I can, this really is the goal of educating and empowering RNOs to take issues back to their residents has been highlighted. That really, when we went back to the beginning of INC, the restated articles, and the way that Inc. serves its purpose is really to get RNOs to the table and take those issues, the information, back to their residents. So a lot of what you'll see in actual changes are driven to allow better participation and greater participation by the actual residents within the RNOs that the delegates serve. So let's talk about that a little bit in terms of how that goal is implemented. So one of the big things in looking back, as communicated to me, because as some of you know, I'm a fairly new Inc. devotee, the participation in terms of how Inc. functions and what the official positions coming out of Inc. had sort of cracked. I think there, at least what was communicated is there were some frustrations about, well, did we do that? Did we not? How was that done? And whatever those frustrations were, are, what we do on a going forward basis under these bylaws is really look at a process that is directed to making sure that INC official positions come from membership. Membership means the RNO members and their delegates, and giving time for discussions about RNO positions and comments and beliefs about issues to be truly vetted and brought back to the table through the delegates. So what we did is we don't want to hamstring the organization from doing the day-to-day business of the organization, right? So getting the bylaws approved is a big one, but getting minutes approved is a small one, right? So we want to make sure that things come to the table and are easily managed by leadership. Leadership being your board and the delegates who serve, but really the board. Having the board make decisions and lead on issues where they need to lead. But when there is an official position, that needs to be truly vetted and made as in terms of a robust education. We talk about here a robust education and voting process. So what we would do is make sure that there are readily available meetings with information, both sides of an issue, bringing it to whether it's at a committee level and then at the main level, making sure that these are issues that come to INC and then they're given time so that the delegates can take those issues back to their RNOs. Whether, even if it's too short, you only maybe have a board meeting. So how do we make this so that really you can get the information out to the neighborhood, allow the RNOs to do what they do, which is lead on these issues with the residents in their neighborhoods, and then give it time to come back fully vetted with questions and with informed and purposeful votes. So we will probably see less official positions, and the ones that we see will be intended to be more fully vetted and more representative of what has support throughout the residents in the city. And then we had a couple comments about that at the executive level saying, all right, but sometimes we have to act pretty quickly. So we've also added this concept that once we have an official position, if there is an action being taken by the city that may or may not impact that position, but if it does, and if the board looking at that says, oh my gosh, we have to have somebody at that meeting tomorrow, or at least have to weigh in, the board may further that official position by sending a letter to the city or the committee at the city or whatever, saying, you should know that INC took a position that says X, and we think what you're doing impacts X. So we want you to know about the official position, which is similar to what you're doing, that may impact how the INC membership has voted on that issue. So again, we want to make sure official positions are purposeful, vetted, and I think that is a really important change. And I will say one other thing about voting. We, I don't know if I specifically called this out in the yeah, I did, so I'll get back to that. But we're trying to make the voting in some ways easier easier to make sure we have the ability to get a broad vote, and easier for people who can't make a particular Saturday still to have their vote included. So we'll come back to that. But I think that is a change that was a long time coming and really made important by issues that had come up more than anything else. I'm going to scroll through this quickly, and I want to remember that a lot of people probably don't find these very interesting. So I want to highlight what is great and then also take you through the boring, because that's our job. We had some issues about how people, membership, dues, who got to run for an officer position or the board or whatever. And we found that there was a lot of really conflicting process within the bylaws and what will come after that, which is sort of implementation by standing rules if necessary. So and Greg, I think, who is the keeper of all of the money and tracks the dues and Troop D and membership, really had some great insight into this in terms of how do we again make this easy for RNOs to participate and yet make it more identifiable when we're getting to people who can run for board positions. So membership now will be tracked whenever people join. And instead of having a date where you have to join, people can join. We want people to join. We want them to get the benefit. We want to hear from people. We want delegates to be able to have a voice. But for the annual meeting in the spring, you will have to have your RNO identified and in good standing the month before, so that we're not having, and votes will still be, or nominations from the floor will still be fine, but it will have to be in time before the annual meeting so that it is not moving at a fast pace during a meeting because people really, again, ought to have time to know, okay, these are the people that are running, they are delegates, the RNOs are in good standing. What do they stand for? Who are they? What are their interests? Where do they want to serve? And frankly, as one of our committee members pointed out, do they have conflicts that we need to know about? So that we get that information and make sure that RNO delegates and people who are voting understand who we have leading, and have time to take those any issues back to their RNOs. So that has been cleaned up and really codified, if you will, in these bylaws, so that process is there for people to look at, and there's no guessing. And frankly, there were a lot of gaps, and those gaps have now been filled. So we also talked a lot about, again, how do we manage meetings and how do we take votes at meetings? And what we, again, go back to is really the purpose, and what Inc., the best of Inc. is when it educates RNOs, brings information to RNOs, makes it easy for RNOs to take that information back to the residents in their neighborhoods, and makes it easier for people to actually have an informed vote when they do vote. So the meeting process has been expanded, and what we say here is it's going to allow for electronic meetings, so that even if there's an in-person, we'd like to be able to have some form of electronic platform so people can more fully participate. And I think right now where we have so many new platforms, it really is pretty easy. And I'm so impressed, and you know what Maggie does in getting these videos up on the YouTube channel and getting this information out so we can take it right by topic in terms of the exact minute it comes up in the meeting is really impressive and is so important for this organization in these times. So we've codified that. So we are going to be able to have more electronic meetings, voting, and sending out after a meeting for some topics, we will be able to send out electronic voting and then immediately get that information communicated to membership. So on the voting, again, we're going to probably have, I think it'll probably follow the Zoom platform, but there are lots of platforms. So electronic voting, even on our Zoom platform, you know, we can vote by raising our hands and doing those things that most of us now know how to do. And we'll probably continue that even if there's in-person voting. We will likely have that staggered, and this is what the bylaws now allow, so that the issue can be introduced and vetted at a meeting and the vote can be taken after the meeting. So those are important to be able to make sure that that voices are heard, and we need to make it easier for voices to be heard and for RNOs to participate fully. The elections I talked about a little bit. There is and has been a standing nominating committee in the bylaws. But I don't know if it has been very active. A lot of organizations have nominating committees that are active, and one of the more important functions of the organization is finding people that will step up. I like to say in Cherry Creek North, you can participate. It's not a life sentence. You can serve for a while, you can step back. We want to make it easy for people to do that. And if somebody has become involved, we'd like nominating committee to be able to reach out to people and say, you know, you were really great in those comments that you made, or doing this, we'd like you to serve on our board. And so I think you'll see the nominating committee become more active. We'd like to make Inc. a safe place for voices and more people to participate. I think these changes do that. And so what we'd like to see, the goal is to get people involved. One of the original statements in the original articles of incorporation way back when was about leadership training and greater RNO leadership training. So we may see more of that, because again, the goal is to make sure that RNOs are empowered and served to be able to serve their residents and bring those voices back to Inc. Some of these, this is the boring stuff, I promised you. Updated indemnity, conflict of interest sections. It is very common, and I think was brought to the committee in some detail by one of our committee members about how easy it is for some people to have a conflict of interest in particular issues. For example, if they serve on a city committee or a governor appointed board, or in other nonprofit organizations that have their own missions that may overlap or coincide with what Inc. is doing. That potential conflict of interest needs to be identified. And if that person wants to run for a board position, people need to know, okay, if you serve on that committee, how will you be more independent in terms of your view when you step on the board? Because when you step on a board, you lose your ability to be whoever you are on other boards, right? You serve the mission of Inc., not of that entity. So it doesn't prevent you, if you have a potential conflict of interest, from serving, but people should know about it. And if it directly impacts a vote that is being taken, then that person should not have a vote on the particular topic when it comes to INC. So we've tried to clean that up, and I think that was a really good add, and Eleni did a lot of help on that issue, so we thank her for that. The other thing that we did is we removed Robert's rules, and I know this isn't everyone's favorite, but I've worked with large operating organizations and small, and I will tell you that even of the highly educated people who serve on these boards, very few know Robert's rules without trying to go find it and dig into it and get a parliamentarian and do this and do that. And again, our goal is to make it clear and to make it easy. And so RNOs, very few of them have Robert's rules. And an organization of RNOs should also make it easy. And again, this is more a current standard practice. If you're the US Senate, it's one thing. But if you're an RNO of RNOs, it's something different. And we should be more clear in our operations by our bylaws, and if necessary, standing rules, what the rules are, and put them on the website so somebody can look at them and figure it out. So we have removed Robert's rules. A lot of the other things that we have done, and I will pull this up and scroll through next. It's almost 10 o'clock. I thought I'd like to be done by 10 o'clock, but a lot of the other changes are really a way to fix some of the language and to make appropriate, consistently used definitions. So I am going to see if I can do a new share here and pull up. You're going to see how messy my, let's see, pull this up. Find a working draft. So you can all see this. We've added a more robust table of contents so that you can find things more easily, right? Easy to really look for, because there are different sections that talk about some same type of topics, but they may be addressed slightly differently in one section versus another in the context. They are consistent, but you'll want to find them in different contexts. So we can look at this and you can get a lot of what we did just by looking at this more robust table of contents. We have RNO members and delegates and associate members. So we have an associate member category that includes people that frankly are not in an RNO, but who want to serve. And while they cannot be a delegate, they're associate members, and that's okay. We've had several people say, well, what if we want organizations to come and be associate members? They can't vote, but they can add a lot of value. So we've got that in there. We'll see how that plays out. Powers, we talk about what are those powers? No individual delegate or committee action can bind Inc. So if you're a committee chair or you're a delegate or you're on a committee, you can't say, well, Inc. stands for X, or our committee is looking at X, because that doesn't bind INC. We are trying to make sure that INC is true to the mission of bringing back this information to RNOs and make sure that we have RNO participation on decisions that bind INC. So, and we've made it full RNO participation, encouraged. We don't tell RNOs how to run their RNO business, But what we do say is if you're going to participate at Inc., we want to give you time to take these things back to your RNO, time to get a vote from your people, time to educate your residents. And so you'll see more robust language under this section about that. And the RNO members have the sole power to act on behalf of Inc. on city matters. So again, it's not the president of the board or the head of a committee or Lou Raders or Tricia Schmidt. I mean, none of us speak for Inc. It's the membership that speaks for Inc. And the process to get member participation and proper voting and proper articulation of those positions has been codified in these new bylaws. On the member dues, we go through annual dues. I told you that if you pay in July, you're good through July. So you're not, and right now there's not a, and Greg we really thank him for that because he really talked about how that might work and how easy it is to track that information, which will make it easier for RNOs to stay members and stay involved. Waiver of dues for need. If you have an organization that does not charge members, right? And you have a small neighborhood or you have a small participation and you want to participate, but you don't have what funds to utilize for that purpose, this codifies the fact that you can come to INC and there is an opportunity to be able to waive dues for those types of organizations. And we talk about meetings, membership meetings. We have regular meetings, annual meetings, special meetings. So if there's an issue of concern, a special meeting can be called either by the board or by the members at a certain level. And we can talk about issues at the INC level when they are identified as being needed. We talk about meeting notices. We talk about quorums. Quorums, we have two different quorums. We have quorums, we want a greater participation for some issues like taking an official position, and then for regular operation of business. I mean, we may not have, we have 32 participants as far as I can see, but if we had a real interesting, sexy topic, we might have 60, but that shouldn't prevent us from doing the work. But if we really want to take official positions, we want to make that robust. And if we want to take official action, again, we're going to have the time to do that. So, and if we've done all that work, we should be able to make these meetings more open to lots of people. So we have virtual meetings allowed. We have delegate participation by different ways, again, trying to make sure people can make it easier to participate and the outreach greater. Meetings can be recorded. Again, I think Inc. does a fabulous job of getting that information out to people and allowing RNOs then to pick up, let's say there are 4 minutes of a presentation that you don't want to try to get that same panel to your RNO, but with this, you can just pull that information from the INC recording because Maggie's identified exactly what second it occurs and how many minutes it runs. And that is a huge benefit for helping educate residents in the city. Then we talk about, again, voting. Motions. Official position motions are different than a motion to accept the minutes into the records of the organization. I talked a little bit about, or maybe too much about official position motions and consistent position statements, or which are official position motions are membership driven on this process, intentional process. Consistent position statements are really for the board to vet and make sure that things, that they're able to act swiftly and consistently on positions that have been taken by INC. We talked about forums, information on motions, timing on motions, R&O member voting requirements. They have to have good standing. They have to have the scope of their delegate authority. Again, we leave a lot to the R&Os to figure out how to govern themselves. One of the original edicts of INC was to make sure they actually were educated. So if we can have some leadership seminars and those things for R&Os, I think that would be completely consistent with INC. And it's open to do that. So we have motions, voting percentages, means of voting at or following a meeting. Again, we might see more times when voting will be taken by following a meeting so that people can watch a video, take it back and vote. We might not have a quorum anymore at a particular meeting, but if we do that following a meeting, we can take that quorum. Silent voting. This is not used very often, frankly, but we wanted to empower the board for things that are really controversial, where maybe there are some confidentiality issues, or there's been some, I know that people have talked about a little bit of cyberbullying that's gone on, and we don't want to do that. So if there is a possibility that some of that may occur, leadership, and we do look to our board to lead, and I'm so impressed with this board because they do that. This would be decided at that level if they believe that there's an issue that should be taken to a silent vote. Again, I don't think it's been used very often. 806 is a big change for the organization. There's no proxy voting. You can't just assign your delegate vote to somebody else. But if you're not going to be there and they're going to take a vote at a meeting as opposed to after a meeting, you can, the board can say, if you want to vote on this and you're not going to be there, here's the absentee vote ballot, which is like an email ballot that you can submit as a delegate. And that will be allowed because, again, we want more participation, not less. We talk about tie votes. We talk about how that is resolved. We talk about the fact that you really got to get something to pass for it to pass. If it doesn't get enough votes, it doesn't pass. If there's a tie, there's a person on the official who is running the meeting, usually president, that can make those tie votes. So we've got, but it's not as much. I mean, again, if something is not approved, it's not approved. So we can look at that when we scroll through if anybody is interested in the details of that. But I encourage everybody to go through this if any of these topics interest you. So we talk about the board. A lot of things that were missing in the prior bylaws were board votes. What's the board quorum? How do they meet? So similar to how membership meets, the board has its section of rules. How they can meet if there's not a board meeting. What are the terms, staggered terms? We talk about solicitation of persons to the board prior to the meeting so that we actually go out and reach out to people. We have nominations from the floor before the annual meeting. We get nominees, and then we have an election process that goes through a tiered structure. Then we have the officers, and we have their duties. We have what happens if there's a resignation. What happens if somebody has reason to be removed for cause? I don't think that's happened. What happens if the whole membership says, oh my God, that person is now, I don't know, serving on some organization inconsistent with this. We think there's a conflict, whatever it is. Membership can actually recall somebody from the board. I don't think that's ever happened, but it's a little like removal for cause, which is done at the board level, sometimes upon notification from somebody else, and recall by membership if there's enough interest by membership that there needs to be a change. Think impeachment, if you will. Vacancies, how are those filled? And then we talk about committees, where a lot of this work is done in Inc. with really robust and very effective committee leadership. And they do a lot of work, and a lot of work gets done outside of these monthly meetings, and bringing that information to INC, to the membership, is so important and vital. And so we've got which committees are operational, which are standing program committees, special committees. We're a special committee, bylaws committee. We won't last forever, which everyone I'm sure is very happy about. We will also talk about our committee chairpersons. There's the executive committee. A lot of the committee work, again, gets done, gets brought back. Leadership takes it to, puts it on the agenda, brings it to the entire organization for vetting, participation, and possible votes. Fiscal year, boring. Conflict of interest, we talked about that a little bit. As long, and for example, one potential conflict of interest, if somebody owns a venue, and you might decide that person is on the board, they own a venue, they want to have one of the events at their venue, and there's going to be a charge for it. Just because they're on the board and they own the venue that might host an Inc. event doesn't mean it's prohibited. It just means it has to be market rate. So if they're going to charge the same or less than somebody else, that is not a conflict of interest. But you do have to disclose, you do have to vet, and some of them you can't vote, right? So there is, doesn't mean you can't participate, but everyone ought to know what your conflict of interest is. And at some point, if that conflict directly impacts a vote, the person with the conflict should not participate in voting. Dissolution, indemnification are just provisions that are standard for nonprofits. This set of bylaws brings them a little more current. Again, there is statutory indemnification. It's not quite as robust. We want people who serve to believe in the organization as long as they act in the best interest of the organization. Again, if you're a board member, you leave all your personal views behind, you serve the organization, the mission of the organization, you bring your talent and your energy, but as long as you're serving that mission and not your own ends, you will have indemnification for your service. Then we have amendment of the articles or bylaws. That's been changed slightly. And that's, again, a really good way to look through and say, okay, what did we do? What exactly is in here? And we can scroll through this, read it. You'll see a lot of our defined terms have been identified. And then at the very end of the document, we have an index of those terms, so that we can, if you're reading through a section because you just, ran to this section, powers of our no members, and it has defined terms in it, then you can swiftly go to, like, what are standing operational committees? You can swiftly go to the index and find out what those mean. So I think it's quarter after. I think that's maybe more detailed than you wanted, Loretta and Tricia, but I will keep this up in case anybody has questions, or I will hand it back to Tricia to manage the questions.
All right. And we did have one comment in the chat, just to say, if somebody has a specific question regarding, one article or subsection, please let us know, and maybe we'll start from the top if that works. And Trish, go ahead.
Well, I think before we scroll through the whole document, because I think it's been pretty weighty, just going through the table of contents, and Lou, thank you, as usual, you did a most excellent job, as you always do, sort of highlighting all the changes that were made, so that people have a great overview. I'd almost open up to questions right now, given everything that Lou said. If anything sort of popped up, to anybody that they want more clarification on or they disagree with, that's really why we're here. So I would actually start at that higher level and, open it up to see if anybody has any thoughts currently, with regard to everything that Lou just sort of laid out.
And I know.
Oh,
We do have Miles, but I do want to also go. I don't know if Steve Neeson's on here, but we'll go to him after Miles. So why don't you call
let me
him
just
Miles?
quickly address something in the chat on tie
Okay.
votes, because this I probably did. We went back and forth on this so many times. And the event of a tie for board positions, the determination shall be decided by a coin toss conducted by the presiding officer, not then running. So that is in the context of election votes. But I thought I did clarify that if something is up to pass and it doesn't get a majority, it fails. So if it doesn't get a majority, even if it's tie, it doesn't get a majority, it fails. So I hope that clarifies that.
And then Miles.
Hi, it sounds like you guys did quite a bit of work here. So the question I have is, if you're removing the Robert's rules, I thought I tried to glance through there. So what are the procedures if somebody brings a motion? What are the procedures if there's a discussion? I know there was talk about looking at the state nonprofit, and that's like 600 pages of information, but I didn't see anything on the procedural aspects of how you handle something on the floor, how you vote, when questions can be asked, because isn't that Robert's rules?
Well, actually, Robert's rules is every bit as long as the act, but these are in here. Motions required, official position motions. That if you look at the actual process on meetings, it is in there. There is some flexibility for leadership to run meetings, but they have to run them in accordance with this particular set of bylaws. They can fill in a few things if it comes in. I always tell clients, these documents are living documents. When you come up on something like a pandemic and you have to adjust your bylaws to address it, you can. But so here, meeting notices, you've got to have the meeting notices out. You have to have anything that comes up for a vote has to be on the agenda for that meeting. You have to have a quorum for the meeting. You have to have, let's just go down in voting.
I think it's there, Lou, and it's
all, if you motions and meetings required. So motions made by any RNO delegate from the floor shall be brought to the membership at a vote at a subsequent meeting. So we walked through all of the processes for an organization like Inc. to take, knowing that meetings are open to the public. A lot of work is done from the floor, but again, when can that be considered, how it's considered? We wanted to make sure that was codified as well. So
Miles, I think what we wanted to do was try to get away from the meetings where a motion is made on the floor and then delegates are asked to vote at that same meeting. Because
No, and I think I understand where you guys are going with this, but did you understand my question? Because I think Robert's rules has a specific sequence of how things are rolled out, questions, and I didn't see that, because you're basically saying we're pushing the Robert's rules to the side, and we're going to use, if there's questions, we're going to look at the state nonprofit. But I didn't see the process here of, so when a motion is brought, when can you talk about it? When the way we've been following it up all this time, like Loretta's been saying, okay, now we're talking, or now that's done. Now we're going to vote because we finished the discussion. There's no more questions that can be asked at this time. So how is that being dealt with in this document, in these changes?
I will tell you, Miles, that if you go to Robert's rules, it has been followed in principle only and not specific. So a lot of the work that I've looked at in my time with Inc. was not in accordance specifically with Robert's rules. And what we say here is, and a meeting, as long as it's on the agenda and things can be brought to the attention from the floor, you just can't vote on it. So it is here. The question about, who raises their hand and how to run that, boards do that pretty darn well. And if you read through here, you'll see, I know it's tedious, but the only rules, we want to make it easy for people to participate. We want to make it easy for management to cut people off, frankly, if as I have seen sometimes in Inc., people are abusive in the chat, turn the chat off. Those things aren't even in Robert's rules, but we want to give leadership the ability to run a meeting appropriately, so long as issues are on the agenda is out before the meeting, that a quorum is taken. If you can follow the process in these bylaws that say, we're gonna talk about this at our meeting. We are going to educate people about it. And if there are some, the conversations will be in that context, right? But if a vote is taken on something new, it gets pushed off. So I think, Miles, if you look through here, if there's something you don't see that you want more specificity on, those are things we can fill in terms of how many questions, who gets to cut off questions. We can always fill in by some standing rules about those, but I don't think, you don't need to address every one of those as long as your structure is solid.
I think I know where you guys are going with this, but maybe what I'm looking for then is a standing rules to know what the process is.
Right.
So when something's brought to the floor, when the motion, when the questions, and just a procedural, because I think everyone's doing it a little differently, but just what INC's process is, just to understand that and have that written down. I don't think it's a lot, but it would just be, what are the steps that somebody brings a motion and then it goes through, we talk about it, and then it moves on.
I think there's a difference between bylaws and standing rules, though, right? And I think what we have to realize is that I think the next phase, quite frankly, will be to bring the standing rules now that exist now in line with the bylaws. And so I think, Miles, some of the more nitty-gritty procedural and process questions that I think you're getting after probably need to live in the standing rules and not necessarily in the bylaws.
I will say, though, let me address one thing. If you really read this, Miles, you will find the processes in here. Very few organizations have standing rules about these issues, honestly. I mean, large operational organizations function very well on a good set of bylaws. So my advocacy is to get rid of so many tiered things like standing rules, to skinny those down. If it's in the bylaws that you run a meeting, and I think, Miles, if you really read through this, you'll see how motions can come up. If you really look at, and please email me, or I can have a conversation with you offline to talk about some of this, but I think you'll find it's in here.
But in the big picture of things, you want more participation. So you want to make things simple. You want to make it so people can get up to speed really quickly. If you get new members who want to talk about something on the floor, you're saying, okay, you've really got to read the bylaws really carefully so you understand how to do this and how this works. So that would be my kind of response to that is, you want to make this accessible. So a quick outline of just how the process works. More detail is in the bylaws, but people just kind of want to they need to understand how this works.
It's a good point in terms of, I can summarize more quickly. Nobody has to read the bylaws. The bylaws are empowering. Nothing prevents people from speaking from the floor. I mean, Loretta may have a time period to get people through an agenda, but there's no limitation on comments, discussion from the floor. That's run by your president under your agenda. And if there's a section for new business, nobody is prevented from raising their hand and saying, I would like to put this on a future agenda, or I have an issue, or whatever. Nothing is prevented. So, and that's true for Robert's rules or anything. It's really run by your agenda, by your notice, and then the voting is what we're tying down more in terms of how much leeway you have to give for that. But enough said on that point.
I just want to add one thing just to follow up to what Lee was saying. I think if people had to read Robert's rules before they came in and tried to, participate in a meeting, that would really limit people from participating in a meeting. And I think that's part of the issue is, can I raise a question? Can I do this? This is trying to simplify it a bit. So just going to say that. And I don't know if you're ready for the next question, or do you have more, Miles?
Oh, again, I'm going to go back to access and people understanding, and a synopsis of how the process works, I think would be very, very helpful, so that people don't have to read the whole thing to just understand and participate. I guess that would be my response. And then the only other follow-up question would be so based on, it's going to take a little bit longer to bring things to vote for the delegation to take a position. Have you guys looked at how that correlates with normally when the city presents something, then city council will be voting on it in a few months. So will this just make it basically a rare thing for INC to be able to take a position, just because the time requirements now are kind of locked in, and things have to be on the agenda before the meetings? And have you looked at it in that scenario, that it just may make it impossible for INC to take a position on anything before city council votes?
We did talk about that, Miles, and it may be, and I think I suggested at the beginning, it may be that there are less official positions by INC, but for any large issues going through the city, group living, for example, there is a lot of time, and it behooves us, and the committees do a great job of this, to stay on top of this. And the reports that we got, even Joel's report on the 20 is plenty, we know about these things, and it may be that INC will not take a position. They did not take a position on a formal position on a yes or no on group living, or on Initiative 300, or on several things, but R&Os did. So one of the things, again, going back to the core mission of Inc., is to empower RNOs. And we may speak as a INC of RNOs, but one of the biggest goals is to make sure RNOs can speak for themselves. And so you may be right, there may be less, but I think where it makes sense to do so, there's a process so that it's not too fast, and yet the ability to take consistent positions is fast enough. That's where we came down on that balanced approach.
Okay, I need to chime in just for a minute, because one of the things that I think we need to have a vote for today before we get into more details and questions is we wanted to bring a vote today, and maybe you want to talk about this, is a modification, a temporary modification of our current bylaws so that we will be able to vote electronically to move forward. And maybe we need to talk about that right now, just a bit, because right now, we don't really have the powers to vote electronically. I mean, when you read the current bylaws, it seems as if we need to vote in person. And so maybe Lou, you want to talk about that briefly?
Well, I look back and Greg and I exchanged some emails about this. The current bylaws would say that if we have a quorum of 20, which I think do, 2/3 approval on a vote today would pass. That's
Okay.
assuming that you accept. And there was a resolution that allowed us during pandemic to use Zoom. So we could do that by a vote today. And these have been out for a while. And so there may be the ability, if people want to move this forward today and just get it done, to vote today by the way that we voted before. I know it's not the easiest, but we all raise our little hands and things like that, but we can get a count. So we do have a quorum, and or did. Maybe some people have fallen asleep at this point, but we could take a vote on this today. However, if there was an interest in spending more time on this issue, I have gotten some little comments from people that I will look at just in terms of some of the typos or an extra the or and in the wrong place, those things that are non-substantive. So we could take a vote today, Loretta, and I think it's up to whether we want to take a vote. Again, you get into a chicken and the egg thing, right? So if we have the ability to vote on that, why don't we have the ability to vote on this? So I guess it's a question of whether delegates believe they want more time. We actually took this back to Cherry Creek North. I had sent this around along with a memo. We talked about it at our board meeting, and we are prepared to take a vote. But if others would like more time, that is something that, Loretta, you can determine.
Okay, well, we'll play it for a little while. I don't want to lose people, so that's the issue too. So that's why I wanted to bring it up now, because I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to, at least bring that up. And that was part of why we really want to make sure we still have people on board, right? Troop, do you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, it was regarding what Miles was talking about, the Roberts rules. And I don't want to beat this horse to death. The way I've looked at it in my R&O is we added as a, if all else fails, we go to Roberts rules. And I think the issue is we could probably never anticipate every procedure and rule and have it outlined. So if we come to a situation where we do not know how to proceed, that's when we go to Robert's rules. And so that's how we used it. But I totally understand that we never use it appropriately. We don't have an expert. And if we were trying to use it, we wouldn't get to using it correctly. So I think we've got a weird situation with, is it necessary? And even if it was, could we do it well? So, so I am kind of in between where, where we are with not using them, but also with why they may be necessary. So just a comment, not a question. Thank you.
I think what we've always had in the past and what I always see in organizations is, then there's a discussion of some, really obscure issue and how to vote on it. And then you have to go back to Robert's rules, and then people have different readings. And then you spend an hour, 2 hours at a meeting trying to figure out whether Robert's rules apply. And since we don't have a parliamentarian here, then you'd have to take it back to the parliamentarian. I do know one, we'd have to do that. And it just becomes so cumbersome. You don't get anything accomplished. So that's kind of my take on it. Judy, and I don't know if you had.
Yeah, I just have a question. I think I get the fact that Robert's rules really aren't followed, even when they're in place, because people actually don't really know what they are, and that it's just important to have a consistent process, whatever that process is, that, and the definitions for who can bring a motion, how is discussed, is it seconded, when is it discussed, to have those boundaries. And I think what Lou is telling us is that the boundaries are in this document, that guidance that we should consistently follow on this. So that's my take on it. And I agree that having a little sort of cheat sheet for anybody, for any of us actually, about making sure, sort of distilling that out, and a cheat sheet for, an operational cheat sheet, really small, simple for any new members, and making sure that we're kind of tuned into that process would be great. And I have two comments. One is about this last voting thing, and because Christine pulled it up really well, I thought, in the chat, about what we might be voting on. I thought that, as we discussed in the executive committee, that what we were really wanting to do is to make sure we had not just a quorum, but that we were going to send out, after this discussion and any possible adaptions that might come from this discussion, sending it out for a SurveyMonkey official vote amongst the delegates and the membership in that kind of way, so that we had sort of that a broader even participation perhaps in the voting. And I haven't had a chance to take it even to my board yet. And that's who I would want to have before the other delegate votes on, puts in the vote and knows what the board is thinking. So, but I thought our goal was to put it out for a SurveyMonkey vote. And is that allowed by the current bylaws?
It's not allowed by the current bylaws per se, but there was a resolution that allowed votes to be taken. The more specific one was in connection with the elections. But again, I think if there is nothing that it prohibits this group from voting to send it back for that purpose. Again, you're a little bit in the chicken and the egg, but if we're meeting the mission and the goals of saying we want to take this back, again, I've highlighted this on the screen. I would completely support saying that if the delegates vote now to move this forward for a final vote by SurveyMonkey by the next meeting, or take a vote at the next meeting, either of those is going to be fine. Loretta can take a vote on that today, and if that's what is voted, we can do that. Again, I think what you have to look at in your bylaws is in the current bylaws, it's not prohibited. It is not prohibited by the act. What people are doing is trying to advance this in a way to allow people to have, but what the current bylaws say is 20 delegates make a quorum, 2/3 approves your amendment to your bylaws. So, but that doesn't say you can't table it. And what we're trying to do, Judy, to your point, is give people enough time to take that back to their board. And I'll say one other thing in terms of the specifics on, I make a motion, I second, a motion should be seconded, discussion and voted on. Those types, you're not going to see for every motion, there must be a motion, a second, a discussion, and a vote. Could add that. That's the kind of thing. But that is
just
process.
what is. Just
Yeah.
what is the guidance?
Yeah, and if that's how people do that, we usually take a motion, second, and vote. There's for things like, because it's different, right? It's different if you're approving your minutes from the last meeting. But we can always, that's the kind of thing that standing rules, we don't want standing rules to be longer than the bylaws. We want standing rules to say, here's exactly 1, 2, 3, right? So it's just, and as far as a cheat sheet, which I think is a great idea, because not a lot of people, like I said, I mean, the memo was supposed to hit the big issues, but a cheat sheet could easily be put together at a later point once these are advanced.
So I think that, and what I'm hearing, and Judy, anyone else, please chime in. But I think one of the other things that we want to talk about is taking this back. I mean, it's been posted, and I know that some people haven't had the opportunity, like you said, Judy, haven't had the opportunity to take it back to their RNOs. I don't know that every member of an RNO wants to, wade through it either, but at least we can give them the truncated version and the memo and talk about that and changes. But I think it's an interesting comment. Now, we do have a motion from Christine in the chat. I make a motion for delegates present today to vote up or down in sending 1, this meeting recording, 2, the proposed bylaws, and the Survey Monkey vote by delegates by a certain date. Now, part of what today was to see if we had any modifications or changes, and I want to make sure that people have that opportunity to bring that also. But we have this motion, and I don't know what people think about that. Any comments? Any seconds?
I would second it, Ms. Trupti.
We're still doing Robert's rules right now. How's that?
That's what's gonna be hard. I will say that my board would probably not even be very interested in going through this. I mean, I can barely get them to read our own bylaws.
I second what Trupti just said. I even chaired this committee and I could not get any interest on behalf of my RNO board. They were like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and I go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, I would say, but I think Christine's point is a good one about making these the recordings of today available, and the bylaws and Lou's memo. What I would do actually this next Wednesday is do a summary with my board about what changes have occurred, especially the DEI language and policy and that addition. The real substance that's changed here, I would do that overview with them and encourage them if they wanted to, and I can do this in advance, if they want to look at it, they're welcome to, but I would like to take a vote so that I can then come back so that the delegate, when the Survey Monkey comes out, people have been informed or have had the opportunity to be informed. That's,
Okay.
and make it available. If we can make it available, I can send out an email to the membership. Please, if you have an interest in this, please go look at this and get back to us, but I don't want to send it out to the members. I don't want to send the documents themselves. I want to give them yet another link to it. Does that make sense?
One thing I would say is I think that those of us who've worked on this and those in leadership, and most of the people, we have 29 right now, most people are committed to INC and put a lot of time in. I think we should all look at this as an opportunity to engage RNOs around the city who are not members and our own RNOs to look at the value of INC, right? We have so much talent on this. And of course, I didn't really realize it till I became a delegate and got more involved, how much information and how much value INC provides to RNOs. And I think rolling out the bylaws is a way for folks who are the delegates to take this back to their RNOs and say, look, we have way more value than even we're members and we're taking advantage of with our membership. So it's an opportunity, and maybe again, it's a good opportunity to sort of farm some new interest for the board. And so I agree that it makes a lot of sense to, I mean, we could vote now if you wanted to, and you could still roll that out, but I think it's fine if what we want to do is exactly what Christine suggested and take this out by SurveyMonkey and then allow people to send this out and engage their communities around INC as sort of a new, fresh opportunity to represent the residents of Denver.
Okay, thanks for that. And I think, the one issue that we had, and I wanted to see if anybody had any major issues that they had concerns about while we have the committee here and the scribe, so we could change things if we want to. But the other question was if minor grammatical corrections can still be made and sent out, and we could approve it if it should have been a comma somewhere or whatever.
Anything non-substantive, people can get to me. Steve sent me a fairly short little list of some things. I haven't had a chance to really look at those, but if anybody sees anything, send it to me, and where appropriate, I'll make that change, those changes. If it's substantive, it should come back to the group, but if it's not, that's just cleanup.
Can you put your email link in the chat? That would help again. So if anybody had anything they wanted, but I'm going to go ahead and let's go back to Christine's motion, and I think let's talk about this a moment. So we can vote up or down. You can do either a thumbs up or a yes or for it. Christine, do you want to go ahead? Go ahead. It's your motion, so go ahead.
I just want to say someone can clean up my language. I was trying to get the three major things in there, and I realized the language might not be great. So go ahead and clean it up. Like Loretta, I heard you say send the proposed bylaws as well as the memo, which I found really helpful. And I did forward it to my board, and some of them showed up today. But there are some good wordsmithers here, so maybe we could clean it up a tiny bit.
All right, that, and we do want the motion, the exact wording, so that our secretary Emmett will have the exact wording, and we can have that down for our minutes. But so the motion from Christine is she makes a motion for the delegates present today to vote regarding sending this meeting recording, the memo that came from the committee, and the proposed bylaws via SurveyMonkey vote to the delegates by a certain date. And the date may be, I'm thinking The question is, how much time would we need?
The documents need to go out in advance of a Survey Monkey vote date is,
Right, and we would need at least, and I was gonna say 14 days, but then again, we have delegate, we have, you know, R&O meetings that may take longer than that, right? So I was
It would be
thinking that-
nice to get it done by the year end though. So what if we just
Right.
said to vote by the next meeting date?
I
which
think,
is-
I mean, they've been sent out once, so, and they
Right.
should be sent out again. So I think the next meeting date is December. We are having a meeting in December, by December 11th. I think the meeting in December, hopefully we'll make it a short meeting so that, you know, it's pre-Christmas, but I mean, we'll know the outcome of the vote by then. And so if we had the vote, Maggie, maybe you can help, and Troop D, you know, if we can get all this, a vote by, is it too late, December 10th? That's the day before the meeting. Or do we want to put it the
I
Monday
think
before
that's a
the
little
meeting?
late.
Okay, what would you suggest, Maggie?
Well, given that it takes a while for people to open their email, and I've droned on about this several times. We need to give them even, gee, I don't know. I guess it's
No,
all,
that the vote has to be done by that date.
Yeah.
That was the end date.
you can
That would make
send the
sense.
Survey Monkey out.
Oh, the Survey Monkey could go out anytime. I'm
So-
just saying,
I'm gonna also kind of maybe clean up the language, something like Christine moves that the recording, the bylaws and the memorandum be sent out to delegation today, or whatever day, say today, and Survey Monkey responses received by whatever date. I think that cleans it up, unless you guys think it doesn't cover everything.
why don't you put it
I
in
can't send
in
it
the
out.
chat?
I can't
put it in
send it
chat.
out today.
No, it won't be today, and I would think maybe by Tuesday?
Hopefully, if nothing interferes in life, which means, you know, I still have to process the video, and I still have to do the table of contents. So I
Wednesday?
hope to have it done by Tuesday.
Okay. Well, let's say Wednesday to be safe.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then received
Date
by.
of the
Yeah,
recording.
yeah.
Okay, there's Trish put it in the chat. Trisha put it in the chat, so let's see, is that correct? Troop D, does that work?
I'm sorry, I was just looking at dates.
Yeah, Troop D, I just took, I just quickly sort of typed up, a similar version to what you
Okay.
stated and just trying to get it cleaned up.
Yes, thanks,
Bye-bye.
Trisha. Okay, so, and we'd say by the 17th, it would be sent out.
What if the responses are received by Monday, the 6th, Maggie? That is the Monday before our next Inc. meeting. So that gives us a week. So if we send it out by the 17th and expect responses by, the Monday before, so that's 12/6, is that enough time? That's a couple.
Well, really, since we'll be sending this out to
2.5 weeks.
individual members, Survey Monkey actually does the tally.
Yeah.
So it's not,
So we could do it,
we could make it like,
How about the Wednesday?
how about that, or even the Thursday prior to the
Okay.
meeting?
Thursday's great. By the 9th,
Yeah,
is that correct? Okay, by the 9th. So we have a date now.
so it would automatically close on the 9th.
Okay, so Christine makes a motion that send out the bylaws, the company memorandum, along with a recording of this meeting to R&O delegate members for their review by,
We also have the
say
survey.
Wednesday, along with the Survey Monkey by Wednesday, the 17th. And then 2,
I would think it'd be probably cleaner to send out the video, the memorandum, any other document, and tell them to expect their ballot.
okay, so,
And
okay,
then we send out the ballot separately to each delegate member and give them till the Thursday prior to our December meeting to return their ballot. And it will shut down automatically the evening of the 9th.
And if we're still operating under the existing bylaws, would that mean we are only sending this, the vote, the Survey Monkey, to the delegates present today, which has been what we've always done? But I think we're making a change so that it goes out to all delegates with the understanding that they can catch a recording and be able to vote. But for this particular vote, is it still going to be just to the delegates present today?
I think you almost have to abide by the bylaws that are.
No, it's
currently-
not in the bylaw. That's not in the bylaws.
Okay, so then we can
That's
send it. to
not, so
everyone.
we
Okay.
can take a vote to send it to everyone.
Perfect.
okay, good, good. And I think that's more inclusive and that's good.
Mhm.
So, and I was thinking, can someone type that out or do you want me to do that? Let me see. It's going to take me a few minutes if I do it, but I think it's just a modification of what Tricia put on there. So just send out the bylaws and accompanying memorandum along with the recording of this meeting. And then a separate email will go out to RNO delegate members for their review.
Why don't you, Loretta, why don't you say, and 2, a subsequent email containing a ballot to vote on the, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? So send out the bylaws, accompanying memorandum along with a recording for their review, and 2, a subsequent email with a ballot to vote on the adoption of the proposed bylaws.
Okay. Do you have that?
No, but I can type it
Yeah.
quick.
Okay, type
No,
it quick.
I
and
think
then-
we should include the date of today's meeting, just put 11/13/2021. And I also think, so this is sort of announcing to them that you will get a Survey Monkey by next week and expect to have to return it. So you're going to tell them ahead of time.
Don't we need a motion, though, that we can, to approve sending this to all the delegates rather than just the members who are here today?
I thought Lou said that was not explicitly stated in the existing bylaws. If
Oh,
that's
okay.
true, we wouldn't have to.
No,
Wait.
we're voting right now to send it to everyone.
Right. So what date are we saying we're going to send everything out by? Send out the bylaws, accompanying memorandum along. What date did we give? Or we just-
Wednesday, the 17th.
That's when their responses are due?
Oh,
that-
no.
it's all
That's when
going
it's
out.
going to be sent out. The
Okay.
responses are due by the 9th of December.
Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
11/17.
And thank you, Wendy, for saying that, this could be helpful for other RNOs that are looking to update their own personal bylaws, which I think, is helpful, and just knowing kind of what we've all done. Adrian, did you have a question? You had your hand up a minute.
Yeah, I just want to make an observation about splitting these two things up. Seems to me it would be a hell of a lot cleaner if we just said, here's a Survey Monkey. Here's what it's about, passing the bylaws. Here's the background information, the record of this meeting, the copy of the bylaws. And when and if you want to consider that in your RNO, you can go there. And the way I would do it is I would just say, I'm the delegate for Baker, and over probably Loretta's objections, I'm going to say, hey, here's a vote we need to make, and let's make it right now. We've got all this stuff. I can give you a quick presentation on it, but to split it up is going to be lethal. I mean, Maggie says that only a fraction of people open any email. This is going to guarantee that, a fraction of a fraction are going to actually get to this. So for God's sake, let's not break it up. Let's just give it as a package. Say, hey, Here's
Yeah.
what you're going to be expected to do. Vote on this damn thing, but do so knowledgeably with this stuff. And just do one.
Is
And
that
do it by some date certain.
is that possible, Maggie? Explain, because I don't know sending out the Survey Monkey. Can you have all that information with it?
Ideally, what you would want to do is send them a link to their own. Well, it's two ways. Survey Monkey, you would have to send out to all of the people, but you can't include the documents necessarily.
Yeah,
So
but
there would be two emails. One
we have
would-
the documents on the Inc. website and a link just to the documents.
we can do that, but that becomes problematic too. Whether that will be read. Actually, what you want to do, I believe, is you'd send that Survey Monkey vote to every delegate separately. And the reason for that is so that it can tally it. It could become confusing to have the links created onto the Survey Monkey. My preference would always be to make one thing a package, but I think sometimes it can cause a problem.
All right, so here's a suggestion. I mean, what we're looking at is a communication that has all these things in it, right? Couldn't we have a communication that goes out by the 17th that has the document? So this is an email, we're attaching a document, linked to the recording on YouTube, whatever documents, 2 documents linked to the recording on YouTube, and a link to Survey Monkey.
The process, though, is like, if you send just a link to Survey Monkey, you really don't know where, well, plus and minus. If you send the link to Survey Monkey, you're not certain always that that's going to be going to the delegate that is going to be voting. They could pass that on to someone else. So ideally, you'd want to send it to each individual delegate that's listed.
I see.
Then we have a record
I see.
that group voted.
But I would just
You
suggest
do
doing
that
it
by
at the
blind
same time.
CC?
Well, blind CC is different. I mean, frankly, when we send out from MailChimp, that's a blind CC right there. And when you send it out from Survey Monkey and you have a list of people, that's a blind CC too.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Thank you. Where the link itself is coming from.
Right.
I understand. Sorry, took me a minute.
That makes sense, Maggie.
Trisha, you're muted, just as I was. Are you talking?
Sorry, yes, thank you, Loretta. I tried to put the motion in the chat without getting into specifics if we were separating Survey Monkey from what we're sending out via the bylaws, accompanying memorandum, et cetera. I just said, take a vote for approval of the pros via Survey Monkey by whatever, and then we could figure out how to attach a Survey Monkey or not attach the Survey Monkey to what we send out or don't send out, sort of separately, if that makes any sense.
That does make sense. Does that work? I mean, we can call the question and again, so I'm going to read it. Make a motion, 1, send out bylaws, accompanying memorandum and recording of this meeting to link to recording of this meeting. God, don't send the link. Don't send the recording to my email. That'll blow it up. The link to the recording of the email. To our R&O delegate members on Wednesday, November 17th, with requests for any responses by, do we need a date certain for the time of the responses, Lou?
Yeah, we want to have a date.
Yeah, what date would you want?
I think we said the
We
10th.
said the 9th.
9th. Yep. Which is Thursday, December 9th.
And that would be in the body of the message too, saying you have until the 9th, until the evening of the 9th to vote. And Survey Monkey can close down the vote at that point in time and take a tally.
Okay. All right. So And then 2 is take a vote for approval of the proposed bylaws via SurveyMonkey, and we had that by December 9th.
Right.
Okay. Do we want to go ahead and vote on this while we have people still here? And I had 2
Yes.
people drop off, but they agreed with it. So and I'm going to take their votes because
I want to agree with Mike Hughes in the chat. About the having responses by a date versus having just a vote. That you don't want to be. We're voting on this document, not a revision.
That's a good point.
The responses that response segment needs to come out.
Well, that makes it almost seem like we do need to do this twice, once to allow responses, adjustments, and then after adjustments, an actual vote. If we're trying to do both of them, right? Am I missing something here? But
well, I think today's meeting was, they've had this document to review and had a chance to show up. And
that means there are no more adjustments. We're voting on this as is. There is no more further other than grammatical stuff, obviously, but that means
that's what I thought.
All right, if that's the case, I'm good with that, but thank you. I misunderstood you, Judy.
Anyone else? Because I think that's it. If we had any substantive changes, we need to have that kind of brought up now, but otherwise grammatical errors, little typos or something like that, those are fine. Those are not substantive.
And there aren't any because they were all caught by Greg earlier.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank
big
you,
shout out to
Greg.
Greg, my great proofer.
I know Greg did a great job. I know
Greg deserves a case of wine for all his.
I think y'all do.
I think if I had a little toast, I would do the little toast to you. But I know that Steve had a couple of little corrections too, so I think maybe that will go in there too, but I don't know if he has anything to add. But I think so.
Let's vote on it.
Take that line out with a request for any responses by, and just.
So I'll read it now. Make a motion to send out bylaws, accompanying memorandum, and recording of this meeting to all our
link to this recording.
Link to all RNO delegate members on Wednesday, 11/17, and take a vote for approval of the proposed bylaws via SurveyMonkey by, and I think I said December 9th. Thursday, December 9th. All right. Do I have everyone, if you can go to and put a thumbs up, or at least, do a hands up or a yes, please do so now. Oh, somebody did both. A thumbs up and a hand. Thank you.
I'll do it.
Is that a double vote then? No, just kidding. No, you're fine.
Chicago.
All right, let's see. We don't have
Early and often.
The hands, actually, the raised hands stay up and the thumbs go away. So
do your hands up, because that works better. The thumbs go down. I can't vote as a co-host, and I don't
Yeah, you
think I
can. I'm
I
voting.
can. Oh, okay, good.
They've changed some things.
Oh, good. So that makes it better now that we can.
So let's make sure everybody's done, because there's still a few hands that are not up. We can assume they don't want to vote for it. That's fine.
So all those 4, put your hands up.
And Emmett has his hands up, just to note that.
He does?
His actual hand up on screen. And Joel's came up. Lainey.
And I have Ellen with her hand up also, but she had to go, so she approved it also. So I had 25. Anybody else count differently?
Trish, are you not voting? Or
Wait, hold on.
She put her little hand up.
I am up.
see
I
her
just can't figure out how to do it on my
hand. I
screen.
see her
I'm having
physical
some
hand.
issues.
Okay, so yeah, that's just good. I'm counting one thing and then there's a different count. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So I had 25. Trupti, did you have 25?
So I've got 22 as hands in the chat using the system. Now,
And then there's 2 actual physical hands. Oh,
and
wait.
And Trish just added hers, at least.
So
in the-
23,
that's-
24, and we had Ellen, which is 25. Okay.
Yep, if we had 2 outside of this, we're at 25.
25. All right, great. It carries. I'm going to ask for those opposed, raise your hands. Everybody else, lower your hands, and let's see if we can get the. Everyone else, lower your hands. Okay. Any opposed? Raise your hand, please. Any abstentions? Raise your hand if you're abstaining. Okay, I don't have any, so I think we have a unanimous vote. Okay. All right, great. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. So we'll get that sent out. You know, congratulations to our committee. You know, and our next phase is hopefully we'll need to get a nominating committee, and we also will probably need to update our standing rules at some point in time. So, and that may be the next step, but we'll have a breather for a little while. How's that? And then, so anything else for today? Anybody have any new business? And again, thanks to the committee and to Maggie is in the chat. Thanks all of those who participated on the committee. A lot of good work. Thank you so much. I think if there's nothing else, I think we have, you know, the bylaws to go out to everybody. We'll have a short meeting in December. You know, we're going to keep it hopefully to an hour, and hopefully you can have some eggnog. No, I don't. I don't know that you want eggnog that early. I don't. But anyway, good luck and thanks everybody for the meeting today, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and hopefully if you're traveling, have a safe travel. All right. Take care, everybody.
Be well, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Loretta, Trupti,
Yes.